Assalamualaikum and good evening, I bid to all. My name is Asyikin Binti Muhammad Zaidi Garmok Singh. I am standing here to talk about a topic that is rarely discussed by other people, which is urbanization. Please stay focused and stay with me until the end. Firstly, to start the topic, let me tell you what urbanization really is. Urbanization refers to the mass movement of population from rural to urban settings and the consequent physical changes to urban settings. In the simple words, urbanization is the process through which cities grow higher and higher percentage of the population comes to live in the city. According to the United Nations World Urbanization Prospect New York in 2019, the United Nations estimated that more than half the world's population, which are 4.2 billion people, now live in urban area, and by 2041, this figure will increase to 6 billion people. To know more about urbanization, please watch this video.
Today, more than half of all people in the world live in an urban area. By mid-century, this will increase to 70%. But as recently as 100 years ago, only 2 out of 10 people lived in a city, and before that, it was even less. How have we reached such a high degree of urbanization, and what does it mean for our future? In the earliest days of human history, humans were hunter-gatherers, often moving from place to place in search of food. But about 10,000 years ago, our ancestors began to learn the secrets of selective breeding and early agricultural techniques. For the first time, people could raise food rather than search for it, and this led to the development of semi-permanent villages for the first time in history. Why only semi-permanent, you might ask? Well, at first the villages still had to relocate every few years as the soil became depleted. It was only with the advent of techniques like irrigation and soil tilling about 5,000 years ago that people could rely on a steady and long-term supply of food, making permanent settlements possible. And with the food surpluses that these techniques produced, it was no longer necessary for everyone to farm. This allowed the development of other specialized trades and, by extension, cities. With cities now producing surplus food as well as tools, crafts, and other goods, there was now the possibility of commerce and interaction over longer distances. And as trade flourished, so did technologies that facilitated it, like carts, ships, roads, and ports. Of course, these things required even more labor to build and maintain, so more people were drawn from the countryside to the cities as more jobs and opportunities became available. If you think modern cities are overcrowded, you may be surprised to learn that some cities in 2000 BC had population densities nearly twice as high as that of Shanghai or Calcutta. One reason for this was that transportation was not widely available, so everything had to be within walking distance, including the few sources of clean water that existed then. And the land area of the city was further restricted by the need for walls to defend against attacks. The Roman Empire was able to develop infrastructure to overcome these limitations. But other than that, modern cities as we know them didn't really get their start until the Industrial Revolution, when new technology deployed on a mass scale allowed cities to expand and integrate further, establishing police, fire, and sanitation departments, as well as road networks and later electricity distribution. So what is the future of cities? Global population is currently more than 7 billion and is predicted to top out around 10 billion. Most of this growth will occur in the urban areas of the world's poorest countries. So how will cities need to change to accommodate this growth? First, the world will need to seek ways to provide adequate food, sanitation, and education for all people. Second, growth will need to happen in a way that does not damage the land that provides us with the goods and services that support the human population. Food production might move to vertical farms and skyscrapers, rooftop gardens, or vacant lots in city centers, while power will increasingly come from multiple sources of renewable energy. Instead of single-family homes, more residences will be built vertically. We may see buildings that contain everything that people need for their daily life, as well as smaller, self-sufficient cities focused on local and sustainable production. The future of cities is diverse, malleable, and creative, no longer built around a single industry, but reflecting an increasingly connected and global world.
Ladies and gentlemen, cities are known to play multifaceted functions in all societies. They are the heart of technological development and economic growth of many nations, while at the same time serving as a breeding ground for poverty, inequality, environmental hazards, and communicable diseases. When large number of people congregate in cities, many problems result, particularly for the poor. For example, many rural migrants who settle in an urban slum area bring their families and their domesticated animals, including both pets and livestock, with them. The urban setting has led to significant inequalities and health problems. The urbanization effect on both developed and developing nations and both wealthy and poor populations within those nations, addressing issues associated with public health problems in urban areas. Furthermore, most urban poor live in slums that are unregulated, have congested conditions, are overcrowded, positioned near open sewers, and restricted to geographically dangerous areas such as hillsides, riverbanks, and water basins subject to landslides, flooding, or industrial hazards. All of these factors lead to the spread of communicable and non-communicable diseases, pollution, poor nutrition, road traffic, and so on. One of the major health resulting from urbanization is nutritional health, especially of the poor populations. One of the reasons that leads to this health problem is the limited financial resources. In addition, the cost of food is higher in cities. The poor people cannot afford to buy nutritious foods for their family. Therefore, they only eat what they manage to get and what they can buy, even though the food that they buy is not as healthy as other foods. Not only that, the environmental contamination of their foods leads to the undernutrition. This behavior affects their health. The urban lack of nutritious diets, lost their appetite, and poor absorption of nutrients. Not only that, it also leads to outbreak of foodborne illnesses. The examples of foodborne illnesses are botulism, salmonellosis, and shigellosis. As what you can see from the slide, botulism is a rare but serious illness caused by a toxin that attacks the body's nerves and causes difficulty breathing, muscle paralysis, and even death. Next, salmonellosis. Salmonellosis is a type of bacteria that cause an upset stomach, diarrhea, fever, and pain, and also cramping in your belly. Lastly, shigellosis is an infectious disease caused by the Shigella bacteria that produces stomach pain, diarrhea, and also fever. However, not only the poor populations suffered from the urbanization, The urban dweller also facing the same problems. They suffer from overnutrition and obesity, a growing global public health problem. Obesity and other lifestyle conditions contributes to chronic diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and heart attack. World Health Organization from an article entitled Obesity, Preventing and Managing the Global Epidemic in 2000 said, although obesity is the most common among wealthy, international agencies have noted the emergence of increased weight among the middle class and poor in recent years. Obesity is caused by increased caloric intake and decreased physical activity, something historically associated with wealth. However, people in urbanized areas of developing countries are also now vulnerable to obesity due to the lack of physical space, continually sitting in workplaces, and excessive energy intake and low energy expenditure. In these areas, infrastructure is often lacking, including sufficient space for recreational activities. Besides, in these non industrial nations, as in created nations, huge managers every now and again place head workplaces in metropolitan capitals, and work is progressively inactive in nature. Another offender related with the danger of creating weight is the adjustment of food admission that has prompted that supposed sustenance progress that expanded the utilization of creature source food sources, sugar, fats, and oils, refined gains, and prepared food in the metropolitan regions. For examples, in China, dietary examples have changed associately with urbanization in the previous 30 years, prompting expanded heftiness. In 2003, the World Health Organization assessed that in excess of 300 million grown-ups were influenced, the greater part in created and exceptionally urbanized nations. From that point forward, the predominance of weight has expanded. For instance, in Australia, around 28% of grown ups were corpulent in 2014 until 2015. Besides, the pollution in the urban areas also lead to health problems. According to the World Health Organization, in the World Health Organization releases country estimates on air pollution exposure and health impact in 2016 estimated that 6.5 million people died of all global deaths as a consequence of indoor and outdoor air pollution, and nearly 90% of air pollution related deaths occurred in low and middle income countries. Helpless sustenance and contamination both add to a third significant challenge for urban populations, which is communicable disease. Communicable disease, also known as infectious disease or transmissible disease, are illnesses that result from the infection, presence, and growth of pathogenic that capable of causing disease and the biologic agents in an individual human or other animal host. Some examples of communicable diseases are influenza, norovirus, as well as coronavirus, the virus that the whole world is dealing at this moment. Not only that, insufficient sterilization can prompt the transmission of helminths and other as intestinal parasites. Pollution, for example, is from CO2 emission from blocked metropolitan regions add to limited and worldwide environmental change and direct medical issues. For instance, respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular diseases, and cancer for both the rich and the poor. Moreover, human to human transmission, animals and insects serve as efficient vectors for diseases within urban settings and do not discriminate between rich and the poor. The commonest and effect of transmittable sicknesses in urban settings, such as tuberculosis, TB, malaria, cholera, dengue, and others, is well established and of global concern. Various researches have been done by the national and international researchers and the policymakers to find the solution, yet the problem cannot be solved. Research on answers for megacities has been progressing since the mid 1990s. These examinations have inferred that the pollution, unreliable electricity, and non functioning infrastructure are priority initiatives. Nevertheless, air pollution, quality of water in cities, congestion, disaster management issues, and infrastructure are not being systematically addressed. In addition, the city transportation, such as road traffic, also leads to the health problem. Statistics shows that at least 10 individuals die each day on the railroads in the city of Mumbai, India. Vietnam is another illustration of a country that has seen an exceptional expansion in street auto collision. Enhancements to the country's framework have not had the option to meet the expanding development of vehicular and human traffic in the city. Vietnam reportedly has a population of 95 million and a greater number of than 18 million motorbikes on its streets. In conclusion, despite the fact that urbanization has become an irreversible marvel, some have contended that to determine the issues of the city, we should handle the root cause of the issue. For example, working on the socio-economic situation of the urban poor. However, until the conditions in rural areas improve, populations will continue to migrate to urban settings. Hence, governments and development agencies should concentrate on adapting to the challenges of urbanization while seeking to reduce unplanned urbanization. Some policies and practices should be considered, such as policies that consider a whole of life journeys, incorporating accessible employment, community participation, mobility or migration, and social transition to break generational poverty cycles. Next, policies addressing urban and environmental issues such as planned urban space and taxes on the use of vehicles to reduce use or to encourage vehicles that use less fuel, as well as encourage bicycle use, walking, and other forms of human transportation. Besides that, greater cooperative planning between rural and urban regions to improve food security, for instance, subsidies for farmers, providing locally produced, unprocessed, and low cost food to urban centers. Lastly, social protection and universal health coverage to reduce wealth disparity among urban dwellers, including introduction of programs and services for health. For example, by establishing primary healthcare clinics accessible and affordable for all, including those who live in the urban slums. We have come to the end of our talk today. Thank you for lending me your precious time.